G'day, welcome one and all to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Today we are going to continue in our Mechanoid series and we're going to take a look at the 5-star legendary green hero, Atomo, the Nuclear Giant. So Atomo is available for summons from the Mechanoid Menace portal, which rolls around once every 8 weeks. It's on a monthly time slot, but it alternates every other month with the other Alliance event, the Monster Hunter or the Monster Island event. Unfortunately, as we saw, this portal does not have any featured heroes, so what that means is that 1.2% chance for a legendary hero could be Atomo or it could be literally anyone else, so bit of a downside to the portal. Atomo himself has been in the game for a very long time. He was first introduced in the initial appearance of the Mechanoid Menace event back in March 2021. The portal's been expanded a couple times since then, with some additional heroes added in April 2022 and again in June 2023 updates. His artwork, I'll flip over to my roster, and I've got to scroll for a while here because I haven't leveled Atomo at all. If you spot him, sing out, but I missed him. There he is. So have a look at his artwork. So he's kind of got some wrist rockets, he's got big bulky frame because he's apparently a big boy, a big giant fella. I don't really see too much evidence of a nuclear situation unless it's like this armor patch on this bit's on his shoulder. Bit of a weird spot to put nuclear reactors if you ask me, but you know, I guess it could work. But yeah, that's his artwork. Pause it if you wish. Interestingly, his artwork has been used in a number of places in SGG advertising, so he was the face of the portal for a very long time. But also if you go into chat support, to the support bot in chat, his icon, he is actually the icon for the support bot. So yeah, a little bit of useless trivia for you, and in no way relevant to anything that we're going to be discussing. So heading back to his card, we can take a look at his family. So he is a member of the Mechanoid's family. Sorry, I should say he is technically, Atomo was kind of like gender neutral, but sort of like the sci-fi section of our brain goes, that guy'd totally be voiced by a male actor. So I'm going to refer to him as a him the whole way through, but you know, it's probably a they, them, it situation, but yeah. So Atomo is a member of the Mechanoid's family, which grants him a 12, 18, 24, or 30% chance to cast a support attack against the main target of an ally's special skill when you have 2, 3, or 4, or 5 heroes or unique Mechanoid heroes in a battle. So note, they do have to be unique heroes, so it can't be like Atomo and Atomo, it's got to be 2 different heroes, so Atomo and Gearbox or Atomo and Mastodon, for example. So a support attack, for those that don't know, is just a 100% snipe against the target of your ally's special skill. So it's kind of like 100% extra damage done from Atomo. Yeah, the Mechanoid family also gains a stat bonus when they are used during the Mechanoid Menace event. So specifically they gain plus 4, 8, 12, 16 or 20% attack and defense when you are using 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 unique Mechanoid heroes in your team. Notably, this only applies during the Mechanoid event stages. It doesn't apply to any other facet of the game, only the Mechanoid Menace stages when you use these heroes. In terms of Atomo's personal stats, he's got 632 attack, 655 defense, and 1608 HP. It is a very low stat line compared to modern heroes. That's because he is quite old, as I mentioned, but he also has had a lot of power creep since that time. So in terms of the stats themselves, it is a massive skewing towards the HP stat. It's kind of like 200 to 250 higher than what's typical for a hero of that age, so it is quite a substantial skewing towards the HP at the expense of attack and defense. His charge speed is set to 36, which is in the 12 tiles to charge bracket, or requiring 6 ghosted tiles. A speed break needs plus 7, which you can technically do, but you have to combine both the green speed gun, the Relic Hunter Bargo, which is plus 6, as well as the 4% class node on his tree at node 20. This is a lot of emblems though to commit to one hero, particularly one like Atomo, and generally speaking, I would say not to bother with the emblems at all, but we're going to get into that in a second. But yeah, without both the plus 6 weapon and the 4% node, you can't actually speed break him, and he's stuck at 12 tiles. Class-wise, Atomo is a member of the Engineering class, which grants him the chance to summon a turret minion after receiving damage from any source. So the turret minion has got 15% health, 18% attack, both of which are inherited from the caster. So he is a beefy minion in the case of Atomo due to that high health stat, and I do like this talent. As I said, the minion can be quite beefy, and it is triggered from any source of damage, so that could be skills, tiles, ailments, other minions, anything that creates damage. The only downside is that the minion is only procced once in a turn, so it doesn't matter how many times you take damage, you can still only get one turret minion per turn. In terms of a specific emblem path, I would, as I said, not bother putting any emblems on Atomo. The reason for this is that he just really isn't worth it. We're going to get into that later and you'll see it in the grading, but I would say to give Atomo a miss in terms of emblems. If you do 100% have to put emblems on him for whatever reason, I would continue accentuating that health and defense stat. So what this looks like is I don't have anyone leveled too far, but I can use one of my 8-bits and demonstrate on him. So what this would look like on the talent tree is we've already gone health, and I would be prioritizing health because you want him to survive, and his damage output, which we'll see, is based on the damage taken. So you don't want to reduce damage with defense improvements. So what this would look like is we would actually pick up that node there to get more health. We'd go health, health, defense, and we'd pick up health at the end. This is, as I said, only if you 100% actually have to put emblem on him. If you have any choice in the matter, don't put emblems on Atomo. It's just not worth it. Yeah, cool. So heading back over to his special skill card. Thank you, Stassi, for a raid. And we'll take a look at his special skill. So his special skill is titled Reactor Shields, and at level 10 skill and 36 charge speed will generate 240 armor for the caster immediately, and then generate a further 228 armor for the caster and nearby allies over 3 turns, so that's 76 armor per turn. It will then deal a strike of 125 to 245% damage to all enemies after 3 turns, with the damage dealt being based on the amount of damage that the caster takes during those 3 turns. So we'll break that down a little bit, and we're going to actually start with the armor generation and the armor. So the self-armor and the armor to nearby allies, it's a decent pairing with his secondary effect if it was large enough to justify his slow speed, and if there was, again, a secondary effect to further aid in survival, such as like a damage share or a damage reduction or a defense buff or anything like that. Unfortunately, the armor generation itself, when you compare it to other healers and armor generators, he is number 45 out of 51 possible healers and armor generators in the game in the 4 and 5 star region. The only heroes that he is better than are the water fight minions, which are genuinely trash. Like, they're not great at all. So if we look only at the green healers and pseudo healers, which we can see here, Atomo is way down the bottom. As I said, the only 2 that are worse than him is Lana and Woo Woo, who are really bad from their minions. Like, their minions are really, really bad, and so that's not really an accomplishment. It is improved slightly to 77 heal per tile when you include that instant 240 self armor to the equation, but thus far I haven't really been including self heals into these lists for comparisons because there's too many of them to really include. So Atomo, he's not a good healer, like, at all. Most of that stems from his slow charge speed, the 12 tiles, which you're stuck at as well, unless you're willing to commit 1,500 emblems to him. So yeah, not a good healer. The other part of his skill is the damage, and the biggest thing I have to say right from the outset with this is that it is delayed damage. We're not talking about instant damage, we're talking about 3 additional turns beyond a hero that requires 12 tiles to charge. So in all likelihood, you're also not charge breaking him. So it's 12 tiles to charge plus 3 more turns to get any damage out of him. The other downside is that the damage is linked to a buff that Atomo has on himself, and like all buffs, this can be nullified when you kill the buff owner or when you dispel it with a skill. You block it by the likes of Chainsaw, you can remove it using Shell Shock, hell, you can even steal it using someone like Flo or Krampus. So even if you do somehow manage to get Atomo to survive long enough to fire his special skill, there's no guarantee you're even going to get the damage off from his skill, because it's not, like, it could be removed by so many different sources. If we look, though, at the damage itself, or the attack power, or potential attack power that we've got, Atomo is a DOA 5 hero. So if we look at his base damage, the absolute minimum amount, we're talking 125% to 3 enemies. So we're plugging that into our attack power calculation, which is attack stat multiplied by percentage. That comes in with an attack power of 790 per enemy. If we divide that by the 12 tiles required to charge his skill, that comes out at an attack power per tile of just 65. 65. That is garbage. If, however, we do get that maximum damage, so he somehow manages to survive the 12 turns, fire his skill, and survives maximum damage to fire his thing in 3 turns time, 245% is actually a fairly decent amount. So the 245% on the 632 comes out with an attack power per tile of 129. So it is double the amount, and consequently, it does jump him up a long way in this list. He is still not as good as Jack or Royalden when hitting armored enemies, but it is better. But, as I said, it's all linked to this delayed damage. So realistically, his damage is going to fall somewhere between the two, between that 65 and 129. And so it eventually does have the potential to deal direct damage. The attack power per tile isn't actually a true representation of this damage output, because all of these other heroes we're comparing to, they're instantaneous damage. Like that, you fire their skill, you do the damage, so it's instantaneous. In the case of Atomo, it's kind of like, it's the 12 tiles, but then it's kind of like additional tiles on top of that. There's no real way of quantifying exactly what that is, because you could get the 12 tiles, like you could have, in 3 turns, you could get an average of 2 tiles per turn, or it could be 5 tiles per turn. All of that sort of differentiates what his damage output could be calculated as. So overall, I'm not a fan of Atomo. I think his skill is just too slow for the eventual impact that it has, and the lack of realistic charge opportunity just kind of further highlights how slow he is. I'm not a huge fan of delayed damage, or delaying his eventual damage by a further 3 turns, but then also tying it to a buff that is cleansable. It can be removed in so many different ways. If it was uncleansable, maybe it might be a different story. But in addition to that, like his slow speed and a removable buff, there's actually no real way to ensure that he does survive long enough to fire his damage, even if he does eventually fire off his skill. So there's no guarantee of being, or real way of improving him such that you can improve his likelihood of firing off his damage in 3 turns. So, you know, he does have that armor generation and the small armor in the initial cast, but it's less than 1 tile's worth of damage per turn. So if you fire 3 tiles at Atomo, you've wiped out all of the armor that he would be generating in those 3 turns. So yeah, realistically, the most obvious comparison for Atomo is to Hypernova. They both have delayed damage after 3 turns based on the damage that they receive. Hypernova, however, has a much higher base attack stat. We're talking 737 versus 632. She has a larger percentage in her skill, so it's 140 to 280 versus Atomo's 125 to 250. She also charges faster, so in 10 tiles it takes her to charge, but she can also be charge broken twice using just weapons. Atomo charges in 12 tiles, 2 tiles slower, and has no way of being charged, so ultimately Atomo is 4 tiles slower than what Hypernova can be. Hypernova also has a defense buff and a damage share where she spreads the damage out across her and her nearby allies, which means she is more likely to actually trigger that maximum amount of damage and survive it. But not only that, but Hypernova has a direct damage and a dispel, which trigger on her first cast. They're instantaneous. So even if her delayed damage is removed, firing her special skill isn't wasted because she has done damage and she has dispelled from the enemy. So this really just showcases how poorly executed Atomo was. Like, it's like they released Atomo and went, oh crap, he's terrible. And then when they got to Hypernova, they're like, here's a 2.0 version, and we'll just shove poor Atomo into the closet and pretend he doesn't exist anymore. So, yeah. Unfortunately for Atomo, in his grading, he does get absolutely hammered. So for War and Raid attacks, I'm giving him a D. For War Machines, a D-. There is no function for him in a War Machine team. Eventing, he's going to get an E. This is, he's not an event hero at all in any way, shape, or form. For defense teams, I guess he can have a D-. maybe you could function him as a flanker or a winger. Neither case is he really well suited. Like, he's a survivalist, but he's an old survivalist, so he's not going to last too well, I don't think. For tournaments, in Bloody Battle, he can have an E grade for attack and an E grade for defense. The reason for this is he loses literally half of his skill and all of the potential for him to survive. Buff boosters, he can have a C- for attack, so an improvement there, and a D grade for defense, and that's because he does generate 2 buffs, so he got the armor over time, and he's got the delayed damage buffs. And then charged attack is where he does get the most value in the game, and this because he goes from the 36 slow up to 65 fast. So I'm going to give him a B- for attack and a B- for defense. So if nothing else, he has some potential to be used in a charged attack tournament, but there's also slow heroes that get just as much improvement that are so much better. So, still not worth it for me. So, overall for that grading, that comes out as being a D grade for attack and a D grade for defense. So, yeah, that concludes the content that I've got for this review of Atomo. I apologize for being harsh on him, but yeah, he's not a good hero. I'm sorry. So, as always, this is just my opinion though, so if you have differing thoughts and feelings about this hero or any of these heroes, please do jump down into the comments section and leave me a note. I love reading them, and I do try to reply to as many of you as I possibly can. If you liked the video and found it to be useful and enjoyed the content, like the video, subscribe to my channel. There's heaps of this sort of content floating around on it, but most importantly, share the video around, because if you found this video to be useful for yourself, it's also most likely going to be useful to the people you play with as well. So share the channel, share the video, and all that sort of stuff. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me for this review of Atomo. I do hope that I will see you soon in a much more positive video, but until then, however, stay safe, good luck, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!